What do you do when you hit a wall in your practice? If I'm honest, this is probably the most difficult part of skill development on the drums. I mean, it's not the rudiments. It's not being able to flow around the kit. It's not the fact that you're not able to play that pattern that you were looking up on YouTube before you saw this video. It's none of that. It's the fact that most drummers simply don't know how to deal with the emotions and the thoughts that come when things get hard in their practice. And this is why drummers go from YouTube video to YouTube video on social media. They go from quick tip to quick tip on Instagram. They're trying to find some quick thing that's going to alleviate that psychological and emotional pain that makes them feel like something's wrong with them because they're not actually achieving the goal that they think they should as fast as they think they should. And I often ask myself, why doesn't anybody on social media talk about this? Or why isn't it talked about a ton more? Because literally it is the hardest thing. It's harder than the rudiment that you're trying to learn. It's actually not the rudiment that's the hard part. It's not the feel that's the hard part. What's the hard part is you dealing with your own emotions and dealing with your own thoughts through the process of actually building the skill to do it. That's the hard part. That's the thing that's causing people to stop. And I know this not just because we've been online for over a decade teaching and having websites and things of that nature, but we actually have a Shed Camp Club where we coach hundreds of drummers and have one-on-ones with these people. And we actually talk to them, guys and girls. And unless you've actually been face-to-face with a musician who is feeling depressed, feeling defeated, wanting to quit, literally crying real tears, making up excuses in their own mind of why it's okay to stay the same now just because they've come up against that wall that you have to climb over, feeling like they'll never be able to get to the other side. Unless you've actually handled that face-to-face, then you just have no idea on how to even approach this situation. But that's why we're able to approach it. And by the end of this video, I'm going to share with you a mantra that I've given our students in the Shed Camp Club that is helping them get over the hump every single day. But right before I get into that, I do want you to understand this. Every creative experiences this. It's not just drummers. It's not just musicians. Everybody who's doing anything creative. Heck, if you're trying to do anything that's substantial or you have a goal in your life that you're really pushing for, you're going to encounter this thing. And it's called resistance. And I'm not the first person to come up with this idea. I literally read a book years ago by an author named Stephen Pressfield called The War of Art. And he talks about this extensively in his book. He's a writer. And he talked about how anytime he would try to sit down and do his art, he would always encounter this resistance. And it resonated with me so deeply because I have experienced that same resistance, that same thing that tells you you're in over your head, that same thing that tells you you're not going to reach the goal. It's too far in front of you. The other people that you see doing this, they have something you don't have. They're naturally talented and gifted in a way that you're not. Maybe you should try to do something else. And if I was to translate all that into drum speak, it would say something like, well, Pocket pays the bills anyway. Maybe I don't need to learn how to solo. Well, if I actually landed that lick, maybe it just would have been inappropriate for me to do. Even though I wouldn't have felt that way if I actually landed the fill. Then there's, I just play for the music anyway. So, I guess all this stuff really doesn't matter. We say all of these things simply to cope with the fact that we're not able to play with the freedom that we want. And we have not been able to get over the wall, even though we've been trying to. But here's the thing about resistance. Resistance always shows up to test you. It shows up when you're on to something. It shows up when you're actually moving in the right direction because it is the opposite of the thing that you were doing before. And so if you are actually moving in the right direction and things become difficult, it's a sign that lets you know you're actually doing things that are pushing you beyond your limits. You're actually working on things that are moving you past where you currently are. Because if you're always just comfortable with what you're doing, it means you're not growing. But growth doesn't feel good. That's the reality. Growth actually moves you to a place of discomfort until you become comfortable there. And now you have expanded your skill set. Now the things that were difficult are no longer difficult and they're easy, but you don't get there without going through that process. And so, look, here is the mantra. I'm going to read it to you. Take this, use this for yourself whenever you are feeling stuck or hitting a wall in your practice. If what I'm practicing is hard, good, it's supposed to be. If what I was practicing was easy, then it wouldn't be practice. Just because I've been working on something for a couple weeks or even a month and don't have it down yet doesn't mean I'm not making progress. It's actually the opposite. It simply means that I'm in the process and my consistency is being tested. The only way to freedom is through this and not around it. This is what the process looks like. This is what they don't show me on social media. On social media, I see the end goal, but I know that the only way there is to focus on the process and to make the process my goal. It's okay that I'm frustrated in my practice. The frustration is there to remind me to realign my focus on the process instead of focusing on the outcome. I understand that consistency is the active ingredient in the recipe of success, and without it, I will achieve nothing. I realize that if I have not been consistent in my practice, that it is irrational for me to be upset with my progress because I haven't done the work. But the good news is I can change that now. The goal is the process, and the freedom I want will be a result of my commitment to the process. And I am committed to the process. When I shared this message with everyone in the Shed Camp Club, the responses were insane. Like, so many people saying things like, this is exactly what I needed. Thanks for helping me get over the hard, because that's what it is. It's the mental, emotional anguish that you feel while you're in the process. But you have to think of yourself like a butterfly, for a lack of a better example. A butterfly is this larva that's crawling around until it goes into the cocoon. And you don't see what happens in the cocoon because the cocoon is the process. That's where it's all happening. And you don't come out as this beautiful butterfly unless you go through that process. And so our Shed Camp Club is literally like the cocoon that drummers come to. They go from being a larva and turning into a beautiful butterfly because we actually walk with them through that process. I hope you've found this valuable, super helpful. I know it's not a drum video where we're on the drum kit blazing away. However, I really feel like this is something that's more important than the next pattern that you'll practice, because it's going to help you get through the development and the process of actually attaining the skill of mastering that pattern. And I also want to challenge you though. I want to challenge you the next time you are practicing something and you do find it tough, to not give up on it, to not go to the next YouTube video, hoping that it's going to be easier and a thing that you can, master quickly, because that's just not how it works. And yes, while it's important to stick with your practice and be persistent, you want to make sure that you're working on the things that matter as well. Like, that does matter. You don't want to be working on the wrong things. I've talked to lots of guys who are persistent, but they're working on the wrong things. And if you feel like you're one of those guys that need to know what you should be practicing to actually build the skills to play with the freedom you want, I can tell you now, it's the core 4 techniques. We talk about this, or at least we've been talking about this a lot recently. We're talking about single strokes in both hands, double strokes in both hands, double kicks in one foot. There's nothing wrong with playing a double kick pedal. However, you should be able to play double kicks at least in one foot, even if you're playing a double kick pedal. And then the fourth one is linear patterns, which is basically singles and doubles between your hands and feet. Like, we call these core 4 techniques the big domino that knocks down all the rest. You master these, everything else becomes easier. All the fills, all the chops, the stuff that you want to play, as long as you have these skills mastered, all that stuff becomes easier, which also means if you're struggling to play patterns that you see online, it's because you haven't mastered these core 4 techniques. And if you haven't heard, we do have a 30-day challenge where we walk with you for 30 days through the process of actual skill development, and we focus on these core 4 techniques. And people who come to this, they get incredible results. I'm not gonna do a huge montage of testimonials or anything like that. But if you're interested, you can click a link in the description and we will walk with you through the process for 30 days, just like we do with our Shed Camp Club members who work with us for a year or more. But yeah, it's just a nice little way to get started in terms of actually committing to seeing what the process looks like and not giving up so fast. And it's just over the course of 30 days. That's it. So if you're interested, click the link in the description and I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace.